We do it live. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks
It's
for
awesome
joining. I'm
people.
so excited to
Cool.
introduce you to Renee Puvvada, who runs Smokin' Hot Books. Renee, would love for you to kind of introduce yourself to your audience because you are such a book marketing expert, and I can't wait for you to share a little bit about your background with our readers and our audience.
Yeah, Amy, thank you so much for this invite. You are like the first, I mean, not the first person, but like every time you call me a book marketing expert, I'm like, I mean, it's that feeling of when you're like, you've just been in it for so long that you're like, oh, I guess maybe I do know more than, I mean, a lot of people, but so it's good. Yeah. So Amy introduced me to Substack when we first met. This is like a little more than a year ago, right? And we were in Wi-Fi tribe together, which for a lot of people who want to be digital nomads, that's a really cool. My internet connection is unstable. Great. Oh gosh. Hopefully people can see this. But yeah, when we first met, Amy had told me about the book that she had published. And I'll just speak directly to you, Amy. You had told me about the book that you had published, and it was really cool. And we connected because of a mutual love for writing, reading, book writing. And we've just stayed in touch the whole time. And then when you asked me to be part of your launch for Write for Money and Power, I was like, absolutely. And back then it was still the relaunch of a six-figure freelance writer. So it has gone through several iterations, which is really fun. So yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and it's been so awesome because I feel like when we started working together, like every week I'd be like, okay, Renee, I'm changing everything. And you were so cool. You just rolled with it. You're like, all right, cool. Let's figure out what this does for the marketing strategy. Let's figure out a new promotion for it. And so
I
it's
was
like,
like,
and
let's
it's
go.
but I'm so grateful for you because it's been so cool to see like with the book, like being able to see such a great, like awesome. I know
That's
I got the first proof
awesome.
copy. But it's so cool that because
Fun.
like of you like able to do so much with the pre-launch that has helped the book so far in terms of putting together a really
That's
good book landing page, like even just
so
clarifying
good.
the messaging behind the book and like having your
Great.
help like with a lot of that and like all of your questions, especially about like who is the audience. And even like
So
I
good.
think the thing that I was really impressed by is like also the way that you helped me like shape like the back cover blurb that's also the Amazon blurb. And I think
Okay,
that
cool.
like
Yeah,
your resources were just so helpful because like that is the main
good.
sales thing that people read when they're like, should I read this book? Like, and if
Yeah.
you don't have that pitch, then like you don't have anything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me just kind of wind back and ask you the $1 million question, which is what actually works when it comes to marketing self published books? Because I know some people in the chat have been saying that they're working on
Hmm.
their self published book. And the thing is, like, a lot of self published authors hit publish to crickets and then get nowhere. So, what are the tactics? What are the mindset? What are some of the pieces that actually work when it comes to marketing a self published book?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been there. I've launched a self-published book to crickets. Thought I knew what I was doing. Um, um, I mean, through courses and through what other people have been telling me, and through personal experimentation, I learned what does work and then what doesn't. What doesn't work, at least that's what I've noticed, is like when you upload your book to Amazon and then you're like, "Yay, I I published it, right?" But then you're like, "Okay, great." Like it has like no reviews. Very few people know about it. If you've told your family and your friends about it, maybe like 20 people know about it, unless you're really popular, and then maybe like 50, which is great until you realize that 50 people is not at all what your soul wanted for your book. Your soul wanted like the world to know about your book, right? Um, and so through experimentation and through courses that I learned this from, I learned that Amazon has an algorithm, just like YouTube, just like Instagram, and you can trigger the algorithm just like Mr. Beast triggers the YouTube algorithm every time he uploads a video. And you can get your book to go viral on Amazon. And you can do that by getting by kind of pre-loading the number of people who buy your book and who leave a review of your book. Um, and that's what you're doing right now, Amy, is that you're actually you're quote unquote preloading. You're like pumping the well, so to speak. You're like priming the pump. You're getting pre-sales. You're charging the battery, right? And people from your audience and people from, from my audience are knowing about your book, and they're buying your book ahead of time so that when your book is officially live, it looks to Amazon that they've already bought the book. They can leave a review of your book. Amazon's like, wow, whatever this book is, I want to share this book widely so that Amazon makes money, you make money, and it turns into a beautiful, healthy garden ecosystem for you and your book. So that, at the very minimum, I would say, is what we probably want to be thinking about.
Yeah, I think that that's like so important. And I think one of the other really inspiring parts about your journey is how you went from working in corporate America, wanting to start to kind of like carve out your path in the book world. And you didn't have a lot of time when you started. Maybe you can kind of share a little bit about kind of like that journey of like what it was like to do this dream on the side of your full time job and how you got your first book out there. And like you can kind of share a little bit about
Hmm.
that journey. Because I think a lot of people that I talk to in our community have corporate
Yeah.
jobs or are kind of writing on the side and they don't really know how to do that. Like, would love for you to kind of sketch out a little bit about your journey about like where you started and then also your first self published book success, because I think that that was like so cool to see that case study.
Yeah, yeah. And that's great, yeah, because exactly, like, if I had found your Substack 4 or 5 years ago, Amy, when I was still working in corporate America, I've been like, "This is perfect," and to be around other people who are also in corporate America looking to spend more time doing the thing that I really loved. But yeah, like, I mean, I'm a corporate girly, just like Amy Porterfield considers herself a corporate girly. I mean, like, what is a corporate girly? It was because, like, when I was 18, instead of be doing journalism, like I really wanted to, I followed what my parents told me to do and did engineering because that's what good girls do, right? And I was a good girl, the firstborn daughter. That's what I do. And so, um, and went into engineering, ended up in, I was like, okay, I gotta join corporate. But I was like, luckily I followed my soul enough that like literally on the first day of my first corporate job, I Googled how to make money online. And looking back, I was like, maybe that was kind of like unhinged, but now I'm really glad I did it. One thing led to another. I'm just like exploring different paths, and I bought a course online. My boyfriend at the time, now husband, totally thought it was a scam, and it kind of was, but I'm glad I did it anyway because it led to like the next thing and the next thing. And all throughout this process, I am publishing self-published books. I am you looking to use the book revenue to have an online income so I could quit my job and travel the world and be a digital nomad like they have on the internet. I was like, that's me. Like whatever, I think many of us are like that. They're like, I don't know what this NPR story is all about, but whatever they're talking about in this article, I'm about it. So I'm going to figure out how to do it. And it was very much not successful at first. So like the first 4 books I ever published were total flops, total failures. I was making like $200, and by failure, okay, so of course, we always have to put failure with quotes. Because at the time I was like, this is not working because $250 a month is not enough to quit my job and travel the world. Um, but looking back, like the one thing that really does matter is believing in yourself enough that it doesn't matter what the failure, quote unquote failure, it doesn't have any meaning. You're just learning, you're gathering mistakes, i.e., you're gathering lessons along the way. And, like you were saying, Amy, like you call me a book marketing guru. The reason that or an expert, I mean, what is an expert? I mean, I just failed enough times to learn what does work. I found a way that does work, and I'm just like, this is the path. Like I've failed so many times and I'm tired of failing. And for anyone who else is tired of failing and, wrote a book that was supposed to be out in the world, but it didn't get out there, then, this is the path that uses the Amazon algorithm, that uses podcasting. Try it. You never have, what do you have to lose really? So yeah,
Yeah. And I
that's
think
now I do this full time. So
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that was really like extraordinary about your story is how like you went on to sell so many copies of your self-published book when you did not have a social media following. You didn't really have
Okay.
like
Yeah.
an email list. And I think that that's so like incredible because like a lot of people who come into
Yes.
self-publishing are like, "Oh, if I don't have 100,000 followers, like am I going to
Yeah.
totally fail?" And I think that like what I love about your journey is that you became a book marketer through the experience of understanding how to market self-published books even if the author doesn't have a million followers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Good point. I completely forgot about this point. Yes, the book that did finally take off, which was a book that I had no experience in, no, I had nothing to do with me. It was just me scraping topics on Amazon, and but yeah, so I had like 0 Instagram followers at the time. I was learning how to build an email list at the time. Um, and this course taught us that you don't need to have an Instagram following. You don't need to have a personal brand around it. You don't need an email list. Just use the Amazon algorithm. Just use the Amazon algorithm. It takes practice to learn how to trigger it. But when you do, oh my gosh, your book is ending up halfway around the world. Like my book is in Hawaii. There's like a cult following of people who are following water harvesting method. Um, they love this book, and I'm just like, oh, I don't. They didn't need to follow an Instagram persona to love the book. They didn't need to be part of this internet empire to love. If you can pour your love into a book, and then find a way to get it out into the world, which you don't need email. Um, this is what Amy's currently doing. She has a big email list and all that, but um, yes, you absolutely can sell thousands of copies. And yeah, and impact the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that like something that I really want to highlight here is that when I launched my last book, which was Six Figure Freelance Writer, I had
Mhm.
48,000 TikTok followers and that did not translate into book sales. And I think that that's the thing that a lot of people didn't realize is that like a lot of like book marketing is not just about amassing a massive amount of social media followers. Like most of the sales of my last book, Six Figure Freelance Writer, came from my 500-person email list, not the 48,000 person audience on
Hmm.
TikTok. And then
So
what I'm seeing
interesting.
also for like Right for Money and Power is like the work that we're doing together is really, really helping the book kind of like I'm competing with myself on the top of the Amazon charts because of the work that you're helping me do with understanding keywords, understanding what
Hmm.
categories. Like there's so much cool stuff like in your repertoire that you've picked up over the years of learning how to get a self-published book out there, not with like building a huge audience, but instead with being smart about positioning, being smart about your
Hmm.
Amazon page. And I think that that's amazing. But I would love to kind of like ask you kind of like, because I know that you focus specifically on nonfiction. I know a lot of our audience is like trying to figure out like, how is nonfiction book marketing different than fiction book marketing? Because I love like on
Yeah.
your website, Smoking Hot Book
Mhm.
Funnels, your tagline is like, we turn authors into authorities. And I love that. And I'm curious to hear a little bit about like the nonfiction space and obviously like we're working together on a nonfiction book and
Mhm.
hearing your marketing like strategies around like turning authors into authorities, like would love to hear a little bit more about like why nonfiction books can really change people's lives and how you kind of approach that from a book marketing perspective.
Ooh, that's such a good question. Yeah, and I don't necessarily just do nonfiction because I like it more than fiction. I love fiction. I've been a reader of fiction my whole life, and I think fiction is probably the next game to master. But yeah, nonfiction is really amazing. One, the I started out in nonfiction because that was how we were taught in the courses I was taking. Over time, I've come to realize that there's a particular mindset you want to have if you want to be successful in nonfiction book marketing. And the first thing you is an element of compassion, an element of intimacy, an element of being so close to your ideal reader's problems that no one else is doing. People are in so much pain, honestly. Like they anyone here who is in corporate America, I was in corporate America, I would have done anything to not be in corporate America anymore. And recently Sarah Mitchell, I don't know if she's here right now. She was telling me about how she recently left her corporate husk and left the fluorescent lights. And like I remember that feeling so vividly of not dying, but you're dying on the inside. And that is the power you get to have when you're a nonfiction author or nonfiction expert in anything, is that you get to lift people. You can help other people lift themselves really um from their husks. People are kind of surviving, you know? People are like, how do I leave corporate America? How do I live my dreams? How do I solve polycystic ovarian syndrome? How do I have better sex with my husband? Like I can't ever, I mean, like people are like can't even orgasm. I'm getting a little unhinged, but like people can't, they have so much like so many like things and stories in their head. So nonfiction is really intimacy with your ideal customer. It's really getting an understanding so deeply about what they're struggling with and why they haven't solved it yet. Why other people aren't solving it, why YouTube can't solve it, why Instagram can't solve it, why are all these things still happening, and how you get to interrupt their pattern and say, look, you get to have a better life. And I know you know that. And this is the book that you've been looking for. So here it is right now. And I'm going to use marketing tactics, positioning, Amazon, all this stuff to get in front of your face, to be like, look, right here, you know, you get to have a better life. Yeah.
No, and I think that that's awesome because I feel like that so many people, like a lot of people in who are watching now, are like burned out on hustle culture,
Mhm.
and they're like wanting to build real revenue from their books to solve real problems for their readers. And so I'm
Mm.
curious, like also like what your thoughts are on kind of like the different strategies with like launching books, because I've heard some people being like, well, I'm just going to launch it on Amazon, hit publish, and just like let it be out there and it'll find its readers eventually, versus like what you and I are doing together, which is creating a launch plan, like a leading up, like what do you feel like is the
A
difference between
runway.
people, yeah,
Yeah.
runway, what do you think is the difference between people who are like, oh, I can just hit publish and it'll find its audience, versus like more of a structured approach? Like why do you feel like that the structured approach, I mean, I would assume you would think the structured approach is going to be like bring better results for most authors, and I'm curious to hear like what your thoughts are on like why authors should probably have a plan going into their book launch.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, well, I would say this. There's nothing wrong with the slow burn approach. There's nothing wrong with dying a slow death in corporate America. Okay? You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh. I mean, like, I'm getting a little on my soapbox here, but like, I have to say it because, um, yeah, like, you can live your whole life in or living a meager existence. You can live your whole life, kind of hoping and praying you get promoted. You can live your whole life hoping and praying that, something comes down and helps you and wakes you up from your dream. Um, this like meager existence. And that's why everyone is here. That's why all of you guys are following Amy, following her Substack. Oh gosh. Sorry, my internet is
No,
not.
it's all good.
Ugh. So that's how I would liken the slow burn approach to book sales, or really any sales or anything. Is like, you're just like, is like being okay with like the meager existence. Okay. So there's that. Then there's the other option, which is like your soul wants that quantum leap. It wants the shower of sparks. It wants the supernova. It wants to blast out of its comfort zone and live an amazing life and feel like you're on fire every day, all day, on fire for a mission, on fire for your life, on fire for helping people live the life that you believe is to be better. You want to, yeah, like that. And that's what I would liken a book launch to be like. When you're like, you got this runway going and you're preparing and you're sending out, like Amy, you're doing pre-orders right now. You're on this runway. You're sending out early copies. You are getting people engaged. You are looking for so that when your book does go live, people are like, buy, add to cart, buy now, buy now, buy now, and they leave you a review. 5 star, 5 star, 5 star, 5 star, maybe 1 4 star, 5 star, 5 star, 5 star. You know, that's like, oh my gosh, wow. Like, that's when impact is made. That's the supernova. That's when you get like this explosion of what I like to call network effects. And network effect means, okay, so one person and another person now can talk about Right for Money and Power, and another person bought the book. So now you have all these three people now interacting. Now you have one more person buying the book, four people now interacting and talking about the book. But you get all of this happening all at once. You get 10,000 people talking about your book. That is impact. That's like people waking up. That's when people are having a spiritual experience, and you get to have that too. So, I mean, it, oh my gosh. It works because it's more exciting, like internally, and it also works because strategically and from a data perspective, people want to buy things that are new. People want to buy things that are that they've been waiting for from a marketing perspective. They don't want to buy things that they could buy 10 years from now. People procrastinate. People will not buy something that they think that is available forever. But when it's new, when people are talking about it, when it's buzzy, oh my gosh, get in on the train. That's how book marketing works. That's how Charlie XCX launched had an amazing launch for what's the I can't even think. Brat.
Oh,
Sorry.
Brat. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
for Brat. That's how Sabrina Carpenter finally broke free after 10 years. And finally had a great launch for that one album. Now I can't even think about it. That's how you make people obsessed with you, obsessed with your brand, obsessed with your book, because they are bought into your mission. That's, yeah, for
Yeah,
lack
no,
of a
it's
better
a
word.
it's a it's a great soapbox because I do think that a lot of writers, so much of us and like our process as writers, and I know like we all kind of like start with this idea that like if you write it, they will come. If you just write the book and just kind of like put it out there in the world, like people will come and find it. But that's actually not what happens. And anybody who's self-published a book to crickets knows that if you do not have a launch strategy, you do not have a readership. And that's just part of the process. Also, I think a lot of the things that people like overlook is the ARC campaign and the power of the ARC campaign. Because if you're like, hey, journalists, book reviewers, bookstagrammers, like you can have the book like 6 months before it comes out and maybe leave a review or make content about it. So many people will be so generous and leave reviews and do, and even you don't even need a super, super long book campaign. Like for my romantasy book, like I just did like 2 weeks of ARC campaigns and people were so
Mm.
kind and left so many reviews. I highly recommend longer. I think Renee, you're like build the launch strategy with all the dominoes, I think is way more effective than just like a quick get it out there. And so, and I've done
Yeah.
both. And I'm saying that like I definitely feel
Mm.
the momentum building a lot more with like a launch strategy that we've built like 6 months before the book is going to come
Mm-hmm.
out. So I do think that I
Mm-hmm.
feel that runway. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's also like the challenging thing for writers because I feel like sometimes the writers can get to the end of their book draft and just feel too exhausted to market it.
Yeah.
And that's where
I know.
like you come in, which I think is great. And I'm kind of curious, like when it comes to like, what are some like the biggest mistakes that you see self-published authors make in their book launch, other than just like hitting publish? Like, what are some of the other
Mm-hmm.
mistakes that are pretty common with people's book launches?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, these mistakes are, we want to tread, yeah, it's mistakes because it's, you just don't know any better. I've made them myself. Yeah, you can hit upload to Amazon, hope that people come, but they don't. Another way that people want to sell their books is they'll, upload and then they'll just beat the hammer on social media. Like I see a lot on LinkedIn. They're like, they'll have a little snippet about their book and then they have a link to Amazon. Or even on Substack, they're like, hoping that someone comes along and clicks that link to Amazon. But it's kind of like shilling like flip-flops by the side of the road. It's like, hey, buy my flip-flops, buy my umbrellas, and you're just being a peddler on the internet. So there's nothing wrong with being a peddler, but you're probably not going to sell that. You're not gonna sell like 10,000 books from just like constantly peddling books online. Um, and it gets exhausting. Like you're just kind of like hoping for a breakthrough at some point. But when you're like just like beating the drum, it just gets exhausting. And then also, yeah, like when people go onto your Amazon link and they see 20 reviews and they see like even if you've worked with a publisher, they might have titled your book with all caps or, um, like like there's a lot of areas where you can make your Amazon profile either really professional, really enticing, really attractive, or it can look like really spammy. And unfortunately, even with people who are coaches and are making six figures online, they go with a publisher and they don't know what they're doing. But that publisher uploads their book and it looks like a very unprofessional Amazon listing. And I like to, like Amy, you were just mentioning this about what's called like the Amazon profile. I like to call it an Amazon profile because it's like your LinkedIn profile. It's like your Instagram profile. It's the place where someone looks. First impressions are made within like a third of a second. Um, Something crazy like that. And when someone sees a spammy title, a spammy description, something and 20, something like 20 reviews, and you're this high and mighty coach, but your book doesn't reflect that, they get suspicious. All right. We're humans. We are looking for trust all the time before we buy. And when they don't see trust in your Amazon profile and your book, they're gonna get suspicious about the rest of it. So like you need more reviews. You're gonna need more reviews. You're gonna judge up your Amazon listing, and I would not rely on social media to peddle books. I would rely on developing a launch runway and then having launch events and really conducting a formal launch and going on podcast tour, going on triggering the Amazon algorithm like what we had talked about, and having a great launch.
I think that sounds great. And then Annie Wilson asks, is there any examples of good versus bad? I think on your Substack, you have some examples or I'm not sure if you have examples on your Substack, but Annie, you should definitely follow Renee's Substack. Do you have examples of like good and bad Amazon listings there, or is that mostly for your coaching clients?
I don't have any bad because I've felt nervous about posting bad Amazon profiles because it can be. I don't want to be like, maybe this is fear talking. I don't want to be like, hey, someone's Amazon profile and someone's like, hey, that's me, and you're like,
No, that's
well,
fair. You don't need public shame, but yeah, I do hear like I think we all know what like the bad one looks like, where it's like there's font that looks bad on the cover, and it looks like it was made in Canva by somebody who is like putting Comic Sans and like
yeah,
and I feel like that and also a bad listing can also be exactly what you said of just not having less than 100 Amazon reviews, because I think you have a good article on Substack about how to get to over 100 reviews. Am I remembering correctly on that one?
yeah, yeah,
That's a good
yeah,
one. That's a good one. Okay, cool. I was making sure that that's where it was, like, because I think that
mhm,
there's like, it's cool that you talk about like triggering the Amazon algorithm with having more than like 100 reviews, because like it does kind of it does draw your eye to see which books pop out with that social proof. The social
exactly.
proof is so key. So if anyone in the audience wants to drop questions, you can. But Renee, I have a big question for you that I think was really kind of reshaped my ideas about book launches. We mentioned briefly the podcast tour, and I also know Amazon ads are a big part of like different
Yeah.
strategies that you blend for people. Why is a
Mhm.
podcast tour important for authors?
So good. Oh my gosh, I love podcast tours. Um, So there's, if anyone is familiar with digital marketing in general, and by digital marketing, I mean like getting the word out there through digital means, meaning like the internet, right? So like you got social media, and if you break down social media, you got LinkedIn, you got Substack, you got Instagram, all the things. You got blogs, you got ads, you got YouTube, you got podcast. There's so many different avenues to market anything. Um, but the data shows that when it comes to nonfiction books and to sell nonfiction books, you want to sell them to nonfiction readers. Who is a nonfiction reader? Where do they spend time? Are they spending time on Instagram scrolling? Are they spending time on YouTube watching an hour-long video? Maybe. But the data has shown that someone who watches or listens to podcasts is someone who loves to learn, someone who loves to spend time learning, and someone who loves to spend money learning. And that intersection of that audience plus nonfiction books is the perfect storm for someone who wants to buy a nonfiction book buy a product off of from a digital marketing channel. And it's also been shown that like 67% of listeners, podcast listeners, have purchased a book that they heard about on a podcast. I've purchased books from podcasts, or at least I've purchased books from people who talked about it on a podcast, like word of mouth spreads. I was getting dinner with my friend Hannah the other day, and she was talking about a book that she was listening to a podcast, and she was talking about the book that she was listening on to it. So she's at least talking about it because she loves to learn. She loves to spend time learning. She loves to spend money learning. So the intersection is just so good. It's also been, it's just like, you can see the case studies like Robert Kiyosaki, James Clear, Tim Ferriss, Jack Canfield. All of these people who were no names at one time became people that we utter, that we speak about because of their books. And they sold their books primarily through podcast interviews and radio interviews if you were in the, the 90s and early 2000s. So the data is there. The data is there. The anecdotal evidence is there. Podcasting and people who love to podcasting to sell nonfiction books and people who love to buy nonfiction books, that is the perfect intersection.
Yeah.
So why not? If you're going to trigger the Amazon algorithm, do that. And also have an amazing podcast tour that shares your book to the people who already who are looking to buy a book like yours.
Yeah. And then Liz asks, is the podcast tour just as effective for fiction books too? I'm curious to hear. I think I don't know. I think I've listened to a few fiction podcasts that have gotten me to get to know fiction readers, but I'm curious. I'm not sure if you know any data about that or if there's anything on your experience, since I know your focus is nonfiction, but I'm just curious if that jumps out at you at all.
That's a really good question. Yeah, I'm not as familiar with fiction. Most fiction that I've ever bought has been through word of mouth. And maybe the general idea is, how can you generate word of mouth? I think a podcast could be a good idea to do that, a good way to do that. But the strategy, the technique, I'm not as familiar, but yeah, I could see it working.
It's interesting. It's just like they are kind of two different beasts in a whole different way. But Amy Gabrielle asks, are these popular podcasts or small ones?
Great question. And I don't want to necessarily differentiate between popular versus small. That's a relative term. But my philosophy with marketing anything is laser focusing as much as possible. And Amy, you mentioned positioning books. It's the same thing. How can we position you, Amy, as the expert on a podcast that has listeners who their only sole reason for listening to that podcast is to learn how to write for money and power, right? And that podcast can be relatively small. I mean, we do want it to be at least ranked in the top 10% globally. There's a way to ensure that. But as long as it's ranked at least top 10% globally, which is really not that high, but also the more important thing is that it has as long as it's a smaller, more focused, more loyal audience to that podcast that's related to your topic and your thought leadership angle, the better. And in fact, some big podcasts that have very general audiences, like Amy Porterfield's podcast is called Online Marketing Made Easy. That can range from anything from podcasting to YouTube to Instagram to LinkedIn to all these different things. It's very general. All right. So getting an intuition as to what's broad versus what's specific is important, but specific is your key. That's how Robert Kiyosaki gained momentum for Rich Dad Poor Dad. When his books were in cardboard boxes in his house, he worked with a marketer to get on personal finance radio shows that were specifically catered to middle-class audiences. Those middle-class audiences want to get rich. And so they listen to Robert Kiyosaki. Before you know it, word is spreading and he's on Oprah, and the rest is history. So more specific, the better.
And I love that. And I think that I think Robert Kiyosaki is kind of like an example of like very specific audience, very specific target. A lot of like romance authors also do this really well. They go to where their audience is. But I think that like I love your point about it doesn't have to be like the biggest podcast in the world to be successful. And I've seen this echoed
Yep.
by a lot of different authors that I've seen on Substack who've done self-publishing. They were like the
Mhm.
biggest spike was not the biggest podcast. It was actually the most concentrated, more specific podcast.
Yes.
I've seen that too. I've seen that like even when I was
Yes.
working with like book influencers on my last book, it wasn't the one with the most followings that had the biggest jump. It was the one that had the most overlap with exactly the audience that I was trying to reach. So I'll
Awesome.
go
That's
ahead and
really good to know.
close out. Yeah, no, thank you. And I want to go ahead and close out this live talking about some of my favorite things that you've done so far for the book marketing for Right for Money and Power that really changed my perspective on book marketing. And I would love to also just kind of hear your thoughts about like anything else that you think is helpful for people to know. But I think like the biggest thing, honestly, was the back cover blurb with Amazon,
Mm.
and that blurb of like learning like what should the headline be? Like how should I sell this book that I think is going to help people? What elements of this should I tell to people about like how this book is going to help them be
Yep.
able to be able to like rethink their writing career and be able to earn more from their writing and kind of
Yeah.
write on their own terms. Like being able to position that for the audience in the back cover, like you gave
Mm.
me such great frameworks and such great resource for that. I thought that was huge. And then another thing
Great.
that I get asked about a lot is that my pre-order page, amysuto.com/power for the book, you were like the number one. You're like, here's like the best example of a good like book landing page. Here's what should
So
be
good.
on it. Here's how to do
So
the
good.
book pre-order incentive. And then the pre-order incentives of giving things away to people who are willing to pre-order a book. Huge strategy. And you've done such a great job with that. So I think that like, and then also like the podcast tour, like it's been so cool to see like the podcast bookings start to come in and getting really excited for those. And so it's like, you've done such an amazing job for me. So thank you. I really appreciate
Thank
it
you.
because like you've helped me with my communication and like trying to figure out like, okay, I wrote this book. Now, how do I tell people about the book and tell them how it's going
Right.
to help them? And you've done such a great job. But would love to kind of like end on like any other thoughts that you have on like what's worked well or like even general advice for people who are watching of like, you're like, oh, this worked for Amy or this worked for other clients. This will probably work for you too. Of any kind of like headlines for people about maybe one thing
Mm-hmm.
you think that they should think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just love everything you said. And Amy, the reason I think you are so successful, is because you don't give up. Like your first or six-figure freelance writer, like you were like, this is going to be the best thing. I have 48,000 TikTok followers. Da, 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 da. And you're like, it's going to be amazing. And I mean, maybe it wasn't quite what you thought it was, but like, you were just like, no problem. Like in a year or two, we're relaunching this. Like there's no other option than this book, like exploding my world. And that is why you are successful, is because you embody everything that successful people have, is that you don't give up. You are successful. You are a someone that people admire. You have all these ideas, you're willing to try things. You're willing to just suspend disbelief for just long enough to try something. And you deserve every ounce of success that you have. So,
Aw, thank
everybody,
you.
like, yeah, yes, like, yeah, Amy is an incredible person. So yeah, like that is success. Like the strategies, like there's so many book marketers on Substack, much less the internet. They all have a different style, right? Just everyone has a different style of dancing or putting their hair up or whatever. But the at the end of the day, you, as long as you believe that you are a successful person, that your book will be successful, that's all you need. Maybe it will flop a few times. It's okay. Keep going. And there will be a moment when those showers of sparks will happen. And you're gonna make so much of an impact, just like Amy.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks, Renee. Well, I think that like I also don't want to like I want to underscore that like yes, it is about identity and believing yourself, but I do think that the rocket fuel, the jet fuel, the fuel you pour onto the fire is strategy. I do believe that. Like because it's like that really helps a lot. So your strategy has helped me so much and you've helped so many other amazing clients. Emmy Laybourne wants to know how to work with you in the comments. Do you want to just kind of tell everybody like how they can reach you, anything that they need to know about working with you or anything else? And I'll drop a link to your Substack in the replay as well. But if anything you want to share with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you are self-publishing a nonfiction book and you're a baller and you are interested in doing things without social media, you want to trigger the Amazon algorithm, you want to go on podcast tour, if that's your style, then you'd be a great fit. You can follow me at my Substack. I'm pretty sure there's probably like going to be some kind of button somewhere where I'll be linked somewhere. You can drop me a DM. You can email me at, maybe I should type this out. I have these like nails right now that are making it difficult to type things. You can email me here. And we'll see if you're a fit. But yeah, spots are definitely limited because I just signed a bunch of people. So you might be able to get on board for next year. So we'll have a chat. Amy is currently in the throes of her pre-sale game, so it's amazing. Check her book out. So yeah, that's how you can find me and get to know me, and you can DM me, and we'll see if we're a fit.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome working with you, Renee. And like, I just think that like with marketing professionals, like it can be hard to find people who you can actually trust. And what I love about you is like you have walked the walk. You self-published your own book and sold 10,000 copies. Like you crushed it. And I think that that's so cool to be able to work with somebody who literally has the results that so many people who are watching this are looking for in terms of like book sales, crushing it, and then doing it with like passion outside of a full-time job when you were getting started and growing your career. And then now you help other people like find that freedom through writing and publishing their books without the gatekeepers, without the noise, without having to wait years for somebody to say yes to you. And I think that that's
Totally.
amazing. So thank you so much for joining, Renee.
Thank
And I
you,
really
Amy.
appreciate you taking the time. And thanks for all of your help so far with marketing my book. So thank you so much. And thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. All
Bye,
right, talk soon.
guys.
Bye.